Breaking news today. Why are both parties so desperate to dodge questions about Jeffrey Epstein?
Hello, and welcome to That News Show, where we discuss the latest facts, fakes, and hypocrisy as reported by the legacy media. Let's roll the tape.
SNBC's Hayes reports that Trump is eager for the public to stop discussing Epstein. Americans deserve truthful answers, not continuous cover-ups by a globalist elite that has deceived us for years. Why do both political parties hurry to shift the conversation whenever Jeffrey Epstein is mentioned? When both Democrats and Republicans unite to shield themselves, it's not just suspicious, it's downright insulting to the nation. Why do we still allow them to dictate what we can know? Hold on to your hats.
She's given us just a very quick briefing, and in terms of the credibility of the different things that they've seen. And I would say that, these files were made up by Comey. They were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden information.
Why do you think your supporters in particular have been so interested in the Epstein story and so upset about how it's been handled? Why do you think that is?
I don't understand it. Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination.
The American people are not convinced by the quick dismissals and excuses surrounding the Epstein case. The connections between Epstein and foreign intelligence, the international scope of his operations, and the consistent suppression of these stories underscore a broader issue of globalist influence eroding American sovereignty. The Epstein scandal exemplifies how the political class, regardless of affiliation, often prioritizes protecting reputations over delivering justice or answers to the public. The Department of Justice and the FBI have conducted their own review, stating there is no evidence of a so-called client list or blackmail operation and that no further disclosure is warranted. It's understandable that grassroots conservatives and independent-minded Americans are frustrated. Too often, Washington elites close ranks to protect their own, whether through classified files, sealed court documents, or strategically crafted press releases. The lack of full disclosure only deepens the suspicion that the political and financial elite are protecting one another at the expense of the American public. The American people are not interested in partisan blame games. They seek the truth and assurance that no one, no matter their wealth or connections, is beyond scrutiny. The reality is that both political parties have not provided the transparency that Americans deserve. There is a strong demand for transparency, and rightfully so. This stance only increases skepticism, particularly when much of the material remains sealed, and the public is expected to simply trust the system. When questions are met with stonewalling, and even Republican leaders start parroting establishment talking points similar to their Democratic counterparts, it's evident that the problem goes beyond any single administration. It is insufficient to merely state that the case is closed or that the files are too sensitive to release. This issue goes beyond political parties. It's about ensuring accountability for the most powerful, regardless of their political ties. Accountability and transparency are not partisan issues. They are the pillars of a free society, and the American people rightfully demand nothing less.
Boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going. I think, really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going.
This whole thing blew up last week when Bondi...
The bipartisan hesitation to release all Epstein-related files, despite significant public demand, indicates a systemic issue. The Department of Justice and the FBI's decision to close the Epstein case, citing privacy and legal concerns, does not address the root problem. When discussing who benefits from keeping scandals under wraps, it's evident that only those with something to hide or those invested in maintaining the status quo want these stories to disappear. Withholding information only deepens suspicions that globalist interests and foreign ties are compromising American sovereignty and the rule of law. Grassroots conservatives and independent-minded Americans are justified in their outrage, when even Republican leaders dismiss legitimate concerns as distractions or mimic mainstream media rhetoric. The path forward requires leaders from all parties to commit to transparency and to dismantle the culture of secrecy that has shielded the powerful for too long. Instead, it perpetuates the belief that powerful interests across the political spectrum prioritize their protection over justice and public trust. This situation goes beyond a single scandal or administration. This is not only disappointing, but also contradicts the principles of accountability and limited government that conservatives profess to value. The American public deserves full disclosure about the extent of international networks in facilitating Epstein's crimes. The idea that we should simply move on or view these issues as distractions perpetuates the corruption and impunity that have plagued Washington for decades. Both political parties have failed to deliver true transparency, with the previous Democratic administration setting a particularly low standard for openness.
Who has been pretty outspoken about hyping the existence of Epstein tapes and a client list and bombshell revelations after going on TV to talk about all that was coming, then turned around and said, it turns out nothing to see here. Some of Trump's most diehard supporters went somewhat predictably nuts, which led to the president sharing this rambling 400-word post, infamously beginning with, "What's going on with my boys," and in some cases, gals. He said MAGA should stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein, who never dies, that the Epstein files were written by the Dems to hurt Trump, including Obama got in there somehow, but they did not release them, which is a little tough to figure out how it was going to hurt Trump if they didn't release them. Then Trump asked about the JFK and Martin Luther King Jr. assassinations, as well as his big lie of a stolen 2020 election, which is, of course, nonsense, and then reiterates that no one cares about Jeffrey Epstein.
It overlooks findings from the Department of Justice and FBI, which under the current administration concluded that Epstein acted alone without a client list or blackmail operation. A notable strength of the segment is its coverage of grassroots frustration and the rare divisions within the conservative base regarding the Epstein case. The coverage heavily relies on innuendo and speculation about President Trump's alleged attempts to suppress discussions about Epstein, presenting these claims as facts without solid evidence. MSNBC's recent segment on the Epstein controversy exemplifies selective outrage and narrative shaping. The ongoing refusal to release all Epstein-related files under both Democratic and Republican administrations highlights a significant institutional failing and underscores the pervasive influence of globalist networks that evade public scrutiny. This critical information is dismissed or ignored, replaced by insinuations of a cover-up, so undermining the credibility of the reporting and contributing to the very distrust MSNBC aims to combat. The failures of former President Biden and Vice President Harris to advance transparency or hold elites accountable are barely mentioned, showing a clear bias and disservice to viewers seeking a complete understanding of institutional failures. And the real issue at hand is the systemic failure of both parties to ensure transparency and accountability. The American public rightfully demands answers, and the media must commit to pursuing the truth rather than convenient narratives. MSNBC would better serve its audience by holding all powerful figures and institutions to the same standard, irrespective of political affiliation. This is quickly overshadowed by the network's focus on exploiting these divisions for political gain, rather than addressing the legitimate demands for transparency that span across party lines. The visual storytelling focuses on sensational graphics and sound bites that emphasize elite protectionism but fail to clarify the facts.
Thank you for your attention to this matter. He was never a big factor in terms of life. You can imagine there was a full revolt in response to that post on Trump's own social media network. Some choice comments, each receiving thousands of likes, including, quote, "You promised us, sir. Putting your MAGA base down is not going to make this go away." Quote, "The statement breaks my heart."
If these issues are not addressed directly, the economic and political repercussions will likely intensify, further eroding trust in our institutions and the market itself. It is a clear indication that the base demands substantive answers and a government that prioritizes their interests over those of a protected class of insiders. Their reluctance to challenge entrenched interests has set a precedent that complicates the current debate. The revolt on Truth Social is more than a minor disturbance or the expression of fringe elements. Recent disclosures show Truth Social incurred losses exceeding $300 million in just the first quarter of this year, with revenue below $1 million. This vocal pushback from a significant portion of the grassroots base signals deep-seated anxieties about elite accountability and the integrity of our institutions, reflecting a growing skepticism toward political leaders who may attempt to sidestep tough questions or suppress dissent. Americans, having been told to accept official narratives, unquestionably, rightfully expect a higher standard from all leaders. Financially, the performance of platforms like Truth Social and its parent company, Trump Media and Technology Group, hinges on public trust and user engagement. The financial and economic implications of the revolt on the president's social media platform, Truth Social, are significant, not only for the administration, but also for the broader conservative movement and the American public. Users are not merely consumers. They are stakeholders whose confidence determines the platform's value and its competitive edge against established tech giants and adversarial media environments. As trust in institutions wanes, consumer confidence and economic behavior shift, leading people to become more cautious with their spending, investments, and civic participation. Furthermore, the previous Democratic administration under former President Biden and Vice President Harris also struggled with transparency and accountability, particularly in high-profile cases of elite misconduct. These figures highlight the economic risks when a platform built on promises of transparency and free speech seems to stifle open debate. This is crucial for everyday Americans, as it affects not just their social media usage, but also the quality of public discourse, potentially reinforcing echo chambers rather than fostering meaningful exchanges. For small business owners and working families, uncertainty about the country's direction, fueled by elite evasion or partisan conflicts, results in real hesitations to hire, expand, or invest. Can you believe this? If our leaders cannot be honest about Epstein, what else are they hiding? Ask yourself this: why do the most powerful people in America across both parties refuse to answer basic questions about Jeffrey Epstein? With President Trump, we demand answers, not excuses. The silence is not just suspicious, it's insulting. Why does the media, which claims to hold the powerful accountable, suddenly lose its curiosity when the names are familiar and the stakes are high? The last administration, led by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, mastered this art of evasion, treating the public like children and the truth as a threat. This is what happens when the global elite protect their own, sacrificing transparency for the comfort of the connected. What do you think? Give us your thoughts below, plus don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be back with more soon.